What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Thursday, everybody. Okay, something happened that I was definitely not expecting. I didn't have Jordan Peterson talking about UFOs in my 2025 bingo card, and yet here we are. If you guys don't know who Jordan Peterson is, he's a psychologist who's very famous, who's been like on many podcasts. He had problems with the Canadian government. I know that there's a lot of people that think he's a polarizing figure, but I do appreciate that someone with his huge platform is now discussing UFOs. And probably one of the best options for him to interview about the topic is somebody who knows about the brain and about in the studies about intuition and the biology of humans, and somebody who's made very important discoveries in these topics recently. He interviewed Dr. Garry Nolan. The head of the Soul Foundation has been working relentlessly on the topic. The discovery he made on the basal ganglia and the Caudate Putamen, I think, will go down as one of the biggest discoveries of our era, because essentially what he's discovering is the source of where ESP potentially could come from. And that is huge. And Peterson and Nolan got into it. I'm going to leave the entire conversation in the description. Just so you know, the topics that they cover, I'm going to read them to you so you guys can know what they talk about. The first timestamp that they discuss is Dr. Nolan's background. Scientific breakthroughs are more about intuition than you would expect. Then they talk about how AI is reshaping the scientific process. They talk about where intuition originates in the brain. This is where the basal ganglia comes up. Nolan himself is the one who brings it up. He says how make decisions with sparse data. Then they also talk about how Dr. Nolan moved to the forefront of UAPs, debunking the Atacama mummy in Chile. They talk about the CIA showed up unannounced, which is one of today's topics, studying the effects of high-intensity microwave weapons. And then they talk about real reports of aerial phenomena and adverse effects on military personnel, which is one of the most sensitive topics that I've discussed with, for example, John Burroughs, who's been looked at by Dr. Garry Nolan. Then they talk about Jacques Vallée, ufology, and the study of extraterrestrial metal alloys. They discuss the US government and intelligence community acknowledges UAPs as a legitimate concern. They discuss the central phenomena that the military is observing, the New Jersey drone incident. And finally, the last topic they cover is the latest that Dr. Nolan is working on, which is Skywatcher, how they can produce a signal that attracts UAPs. He's talking about the dog whistle, and potentially they also discuss psionics. So that's a very, very interesting conversation right there. But I am going to show you and react to a clip that I chose where Dr. Nolan discusses, when he was starting to talk about the topic, the more edgy side of the topic, and how people from the White House reached out to him to tell him to shut up, essentially and basically threatening him, and how he believes that we are not living in a place that is our own, i.e., Earth. That's what he thinks. So let's see the clip and see what it's about. So here's Dr. Garry Nolan with Jordan Peterson talking about UFOs, UAP, and how the White House apparently threatened him.
What the hell you think is going on? And what this has done to you too. This has got to kind of come out of left field, so to speak, in a severe way. And so I imagine it's put a bit of a bump into your life. I mean, maybe one that's mostly interesting, but still, it's to call it strange is to barely scrape the surface. So what do you make of this?
That there's something non-human here, and it's been here for a long time, is my provisional conclusion.
And just so you know, because this is very important to me as a media analyst, because one of the main goals that I think we should have as creators is the more voices that come on the topic and become interested in the topic, the better. Because just think about it. Dr. Jordan Peterson has 8.73 million subscribers on his YouTube channel alone. Combined, he has way more than that in all his social media outlets. And I can guarantee you that a high number of those subscribers and followers do not pay attention to UFOs at all. So the fact that he has somebody like Dr. Nolan, who is one of the most accomplished people in the topic, if not the most, alongside like Dr. Jacques Vallée or Dr. Hal Puthoff, is a huge deal. So to me, this is really good for the entire topic. And the fact that they're talking about it this openly, this candidly, and to such a big audience is very important to me. I think the more voices on the topic, the merrier. So kudos to Dr. Nolan. Kudos to Jordan Peterson for daring to ask about these things and for having Dr. Nolan on.
And, the question is not, that people should ask is not, is there something here? You have to ask the question first, can there something be here? And the short answer is, of course there can, because the universe is 14 billion years old. You could have gotten from one side of the galaxy to the other in our galaxy in Elon Musk's Tesla if it were traveling at 10,000 miles an hour, right? But what got on in the first place doesn't mean the same thing as what gets off on the other side. So yes, the short answer is something can be here. What it is, I'm not 100% sure, and I feel very uncomfortable with the sightings of biological beings, if only because they just look a little too much like us, and I just can't see from a genetics point of view why the human form is so, or even 2 legs and 2 arms is necessarily biologically the most successful shape. So I think there's something here. I think the data, the evidence of the hypothesis, there's more than enough evidence to say that it's worth investigating. So I would ask my colleagues to just hold their sarcasm for a while.
That comment, I think, is very important because it goes back all the way to Enrico Fermi, who famously said, "Where are the aliens?" And he did it in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way. But that type of smugness and attitude from the scientific community, the mainstream establishment, has persisted over so many decades. And Dr. Nolan here says, my colleagues should hold off on their sarcasm because it is such a cultural thing for mainstream science to react in this way that he already knows that some of the most mainstream scientists are always going to have this reaction. And he's just asking for them to please just look at the data and then you can form an opinion, because they haven't done that. And Dr. Nolan is completely spot on here, I think.
While, because how do you deny thousands of reports like this? I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but I mean, I did get a phone call from somebody representing the White House because I was talking about something that they felt was a little too on the edge. They said, "You need to just shut up, Garry." I mean, I'm just telling you. I mean, I've briefed Canadian Parliament. I went to your Parliament in Toronto and I briefed all 3 parties on it. The only ones who didn't want to hear anything were the separatists. So interestingly, but no, I spent 2 days there on that. And we've briefed the European Parliament as well on it, and they're aware.
I didn't know that Dr. Nolan did that he briefed the Canadian and the European parliaments. That's news to me. The stuff about the White House, he had already kind of commented on it, but he didn't say White House, I don't think, the last time. He said somebody from the government. And I find that really unnerving that somebody at the White House called him up and said, "Shut up," essentially threatening him. And he had to stop talking about whatever he was talking. If you guys can go back and listened to whatever he said in previous interviews, and you think that might be the sensitive topic he discussed that drew this threat from the White House, please let me know in the comments, because I really don't have an idea of what he could have said there.
Of what some of their own military are talking about. So that I conclude that there's definitely something here. But I think the more interesting conclusion is if something is here, it's likely been here longer than humans have even been civilized. So it really opens the question, and actually it's something that I think Charles Fort actually said, is, Earth is probably somebody else's property.
That's a pretty wild statement. And it goes back many decades of many researchers and authors who have spoken about this. I know that John Keel has a book called Disneyland of the Gods. I know that Salvador Freixedo has a book that says we are a farm, essentially. And yeah, you got to think about it this way. And I'm glad that Dr. Nolan is going back to people like Jacques Vallée or John Keel, because they're the ones that pioneered these ideas that there's something that has been here interacting with humanity for millennia. It's even in ancient scripture and everything. And we are the younger type of hominids and younger civilization that is new to the earth, not them. And all of the USO reports and everything that's been talked about over so many decades, some of the Nazca tridactyls data also points towards that. Dr. Celestino Piotti's data also points towards that the hominid of the time has been always kind of tampered with and experimented on, because, for example, Dr. Piotti saw how the DNA of the hominid at the time that he studied was tampered with. He calls it the anterior being. I think it's just like the NHI, I would say, or Tom DeLonge, or even Jeremy Corbell recently calls them the others. But this intelligence that we can't define yet, we don't know what it is, but it has been interacting with us forever. So I'm glad that Dr. Nolan is doing this. I'm glad that he's talking about this. The stuff about the Caudate putamen that he discusses is really interesting. I don't know if there's anything new there yet, because I haven't seen the entire episode, but I am going to leave it in the description so you guys can check it out and let me know what are your favorite parts of this entire episode that is like an hour and a half. Let me know in the comments. And thank you to Dr. Nolan for doing this with Jordan Peterson. Thank you to Jordan Peterson for daring to have Dr. Nolan on and treating him with respect, the respect that I think he deserves for the work that he does, which is essential to the topic. And just let me know what you think about this in the comments. I'll be reading. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in any other way, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always very, very appreciated. So thank you. There's also all the interviews are on every platform thanks to KGRA. You can check those out too. And that's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Dr. Garry Nolan and Jordan Peterson. Always. Bye.